So this is a social housing retrofit accelerator event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. So I'll pass over to you, Billy, to start the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. So I'm Billy Cliffin. I'm a senior consultant here at Turner & Townsend. Just a bit of my background before we dive in. I've been helping landlords, social landlords, local authorities access SHDF funding for the last couple of years. So I've got good experience around developing those project applications. I've also worked for a couple of housing associations, so I have some understanding of the challenges, operational challenges in kind of trying to mobilize for retrofit and develop that business case really to unlock funding and unlock resource within the organization to support your retrofit ambitions. So today is all around building that business case, building a good business case, and really crucially being able to tell the story around the business case itself. That's almost just as important as the detail and the plan and the program, which we'll talk about. Being able to communicate the business case to different stakeholders inside and outside your organization and residents is really crucial to making a successful business case. So we'll look at both elements today and separate them out a little bit. But ultimately, we're doing this because a successful retrofit project needs support from a lot of people, and you need to get them on your side to do that, and you need the right team as well. So we'll start by looking at how you build that good business case, and let's just kind of set the scene about what a business case should do before we dive into the detail of what it is. And really, it's about helping all the key stakeholders understand, influence and shape the project as well. You're not just presenting the project to them. We want their input so they can help shape it. It should enable decision makers, particularly those senior leadership decision makers with the influence and the purse strings, to make them aware of the costs and the benefits and of course the risks of the project. And that's the risks of delivering, but also the risks of not proceeding with this project. That those risks need to be clear. So the business case needs to make crystal clear the purpose of that project, demonstrate to all stakeholders that the implications of the project have been thought through. So there's a lot of work, really, a lot of thinking that goes on in the business case. And once it's starting to take shape, it's then your guiding star throughout the project. It can form the basis for managing the project, for monitoring and evaluating progress. And ultimately, it needs to tell that compelling story for your project. Why does the project matter? How does it tie in with your corporate objectives? And do you know what those corporate objectives are? And have you got that alignment there? What will it deliver, and how are you going to make it work? And specifically for retrofit, we've got a broad set of problems, challenges and opportunities that we're trying to address, from fuel poverty to energy security, to the cost of living, damp and mold, decarbonisation. I imagine many of you have a decarbonisation targets and a strategy in place, and also thinking about climate change, adaptation as well. So mitigating from the risks of overheating and flooding and so on. So the case for this retrofit is crucial, and it'd be tempting to think, certainly you're leading on retrofit, that surely everyone's brought into that agenda, and they might be. Most people are starting to care about this from the leadership team up, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a high priority for those decision makers. And that's where the business case and your storytelling, your persuasive skills really come in, because we might like to think decisions are based on facts and figures and evidence, but we know actually that's not always the case. And the story is what helps you bring your business case to life and really drive that engagement with your stakeholders. Helpful as well to think about what a business case isn't. It's a tool for thinking. It's not. One of the key points here is not a frozen document. It's not static. It should change and evolve throughout the planning of the project and during delivery as well. But crucially, in that planning stage, you need to give yourself time to allow the business case to grow, to evolve, for feedback to go back into it. So that idea that it's static and you have to get it right early on is what it isn't. If if you're experienced, even if you're experienced, you've got a great business case, it needs to incorporate the views of other stakeholders and address some of their priorities too. And it's a tool for discussion, it's not a substitute for discussion. It will help inform and drive those conversations, whether you're presenting to the board, presenting to your exec team, or going out to other team members or residents and so on. Now, one helpful way to start thinking about what the business case should do, it should tackle 3 fundamental questions. And that is the what of the project. What is the project? What will it deliver? Why are you proposing that project? And how are you going to deliver it? This high-level framework can really think about the way you start to present information and what the business case needs to answer. Now we're going to break that down even further. This is our model of the business case. It's a framework really of different topics, essential topics that you need to make sure you cover in your retrofit business case. And it's a series of questions that you need to answer for your successful project. Now we'll dive into each one of these, and there's no implied sequence here. Just some projects you'll start with maybe the outcomes and the costs because you're set to a budget. Other projects you might start with a delivery plan or the benefits, but ultimately they'll feed back into each other, influence different areas, and go through that evolution process. And you can start anywhere in the block as you develop your business case with an idea or a constraint, and information will become available at different times. And as I said, it might change other information in other blocks. So no immediate place to start, but areas to tick off in your business case. We'll start with strategic purpose at the top. So this is all about the alignment between this project and the organizational strategy. So the organization might have a net zero carbon emissions target by 2050. And this specific project is a step towards net zero housing, a step towards that long-term decarbonisation project. There might be other alignment areas that you think about, so damp and mould, fire safety, decent homes, reducing maintenance costs. If these are other strategic objectives or strategic themes within your organisation, you need to tie that into the strategic purpose of this retrofit project. This really helps the senior leadership team in particular to get on board. Coming down to the outcomes, this is what the project will deliver. Without getting into the specific detail, we need to think about the outcome first. So the project will deliver an upgrade of 100 properties to EPC C. That's a simple outcome that you can clearly communicate to others. The benefits, the way you start to think about, if we deliver this project, what will the benefits be and who will be the beneficiaries of those? So you might be, a wider benefit might be that you're developing your capability for large-scale retrofit upgrades, you're improving the quality of your stock, you're reducing maintenance costs, reducing damp and mould, particularly for properties where they're an issue, improving tenant satisfaction. These are some of the other wider benefits that your project will deliver. So they link up with that specific, more focused outcome. The retrofit actions are what are the steps that we'll take to deliver the outcomes and the benefits that we just described. So this might be to deliver that EPCC, 100 properties was the outcome. The actual actions might be a combination of delivering external wall insulation, delivering loft insulation with a replacement windows and doors program. Delivery plan itself, we're probably quite familiar with this if you've worked on capital works programs, or even if you haven't, it's the steps, it's the timelines, it's the program for delivering those retrofit actions that we described. Now this can take a lot of thought and input to get that delivery plan right. You might want to engage with your supply chain. You might want to engage with the people on the ground that will deliver this project, like the resident liaison officers, the project managers, and the strategy team who are developing this as well. So really, really important to get that delivery plan right. You can start at a high level and then refine it as you develop your business case. Now, as you'd imagine, a business case definitely needs to set out the costs for the project and also the financing. So do you know how much the retrofit measures will cost to deliver? What the delivery costs themselves will be from the supply chain side? And if you thought about, or you're probably starting to think about the financing as well, separating those two out. We know what the costs are, We're going to finance it partly from internally secured budget, and also from government funding if we're successful, like SHDF. Also need to spell out the resources. Now this can be both internal and external resources to deliver the project. So starting to think about the project management resource, the resident liaison resource, the comms team. You still have the strategic team, the sustainability manager involved at some level, but also the external resource. So your supply chain, your past 2035 specialists, your delivery contractors, any other consultants that you might need around this. Really, really important to spell out the resource requirements and look where you have resource existing, and where there are gaps and how you plan to address those. Now, some of those gaps you might need to procure supply chain partners, and the procurement strategy needs to really be thought about in the business case, and that needs to start early on. It's a vital part of any capital project. So you're starting to think about the strategy and the tactics for procuring those external resources. Do you have a procurement team in place, or do you need to appoint specialist consultant support around procurement? What are the procurement timelines? What are your routes to market? You might not have all the answers yet, but it's setting up that procurement team, thinking about the timelines of your procurement strategy. And finally, risk management. Every project carries risk. I like to separate risk management out into two categories. There's the risk as you develop the project itself. Do you have enough resource to develop this business case, to get people on board? Have you thought about your stakeholder engagement? These are key risks in actually getting the project ahead. And then, of course, there's the risk management of the project itself. So delivery risks, resident buy-in, lack of engagement from poor resident buy-in, supply chain issues. Starting to think about those risk management areas for delivery itself should come into your business case, and it really shows off to leadership in particular that you've really thought everything through. So thinking back to that what, why, and how framework that I introduced previously, we can actually apply this to this deeper framework. The strategic purpose is the why. The outcome, the benefits, and the retrofit actions are the what, and the remaining areas are the how. So as you go in to maybe present, it can be helpful to present this framework, but actually to tell the story of the what, the why, and the how, and show how that breaks down into this specific framework. So to recap on the business case before we move on to the storytelling side, it's a business case is a story. It's not a document. It will explain the purpose of the project and why it's important to the organization. Really crucial to start early, even before you have all the information you're ultimately going to need. This can start 6 to 12 months before you hope to deliver a project at least. And it highlights the balance between the different components from that framework that we showed. You might have a really good project, but if it's not cost effective to deliver, then the business case isn't there. Or you might have a suite of retrofit actions that you simply can't deliver in the time available. So in that case, you need to rebalance the project, address the scope, and match it to what you can deliver. And the business case is a conversation to allow that to happen. So you're really confident that delivery is possible with the time and resource that you have. And you need to know it. If you're driving this forwards, it needs to be up your sleeve. You need to be ready to talk about it. We'll talk about some tactics about how you can do that effectively next. So we're going to talk about telling the story. We've talked about the key components of the business case, specifically for a retrofit project in the housing sector. Now let's think more broadly about how you really convince people, get them on board, which is absolutely crucial in warming up the organization, mobilizing resource, and getting senior leadership buy-in into your retrofit business case. So as you tell that story, it needs to connect with people, to connect with those various stakeholders, it needs to address their needs and wants, and you need to be as persuasive as possible. So this is all about creating that compelling story, aligning it with the goals of the organization, and also not just having the story, but being able to tell it, different elements. And we'll dive into that now on how you can do that. So this is another helpful framework again to break that down. Starting at the top, we've got the story itself. That's the business case that we've looked at. That's the what, the why, and the how. Which properties are you planning to target? The what, why is it important to your business case, and how we deliver it? That's your business case. That's the story that you're looking at. Next, we look at alignment. I've touched on this a little bit, but it's absolutely crucial in the sector. We know there's such limited resources. There's a lot of pressure, limited budget. So alignment is such a helpful way to get the retrofit project into the senior leadership team in particular. So you need to show that you align with the needs and the goals of your organization. A good way to do this is to think about and look at the corporate strategy. Does that have high level ambitions? Does that link to retrofit and decarbonisation? What other opportunities for alignment are there? Again, we've mentioned damp and mould, fire safety, resident satisfaction, and decarbonisation are the key ones that you're really looking to align with, but also taking a life cycle cost. Retrofit done well will reduce maintenance costs, which can have a positive impact on spend in the long term. Once you've kind of nailed that alignment, it's about telling the story. We're going to look at that a little bit more, but you need to be able to reduce the complexity of your story. You need to be able to adapt it to different audiences, and then use that story to convince people and get them on board. Let's think about how we tell that story. And a classic way of constructing your communications is the elevator pitch. Now, this is a framework for that elevator pitch, and we call it the inverted pyramid. This is a technique developed by journalists, and we'll be familiar with it with a newspaper article where you have the headline, the key takeaways immediately under that headline, and then you move into the detail of the story. Often we can get that wrong, particularly in reports. We might think that we need to present all the detail, provide the context, provide the reader, present the conclusions at the end. The key important information might not always come till the end, because we think we need to set things out. Actually, it's really important to flip it, both in written documents, but also when you go up and you present to people, give them that most important information, that need to know, the key headlines. So you start with that core information, those few and simple words, then you start to introduce your main argument, then you move into the numbers and the further detail. And that just makes sure that the key communication points are hit early on and that you get people's attention. So really start to make sure that you set yourself up in this way, use that inverted pyramid, whether that's in the classic elevator pitch where your CEO gets in the same elevator as you can do it quickly, or a longer report or a presentation. Now we're going to look at techniques for adapting the story, and I think these are really interesting and can be really helpful. This is the social styles matrix that you can see there on the right. Now, from my experience, when you're in an operational environment, I tended to have a feeling about, particularly the senior leadership team, how they thought, what messages might land with them the most. And this is a really helpful framework to try and think about the different people in your organization, particularly those leaders. Now I'll go through, bring this to life a little bit more. So the analytics, these are the thinkers. They tend to prioritize facts, logic, thorough analysis. They like to think things through carefully, thoroughly before making decisions. Precision and accuracy really matter to them. The drivers are action orientated and results driven. You often see these people doing well in the kind of the maintenance, the reactive world, the people where decisions need to be made quickly. They often exhibit these traits, but not necessarily. They focus on the what needs to be done. They're often very direct and decisive. Efficiency and achieving goals are generally their priorities. The amiables, they emphasize relationships and harmony. They want to know why things are happening and seek consensus. They really value collaboration and tend to avoid conflict as well. Finally, the expressives, they're the enthusiastic, they're the people orientated, and they're creative, and they really want to know who's involved, and they like sharing ideas. They thrive on social engagement and emotional connections. Now, clearly, people in the world isn't divided neatly into these 4 categories. Some people might exhibit 2 or 3 of these, but often it is a helpful framework to think about how you can communicate. And maybe if one senior leader asks you a question, you can just adapt your answer a little bit to try and hit the right notes for them and make that emotional connection that will get them on board with your project. So that's really the end of the presentation. Just to summarize, really, we looked first at the business case, giving you a framework to set that out. But number one point, start that business case early, start involving people early in the discussions. It takes time to get it right. Once you've got your business case, you need to be able to tell your story. We've looked at what the key components of that story are. The story brings the business case to life and helps people connect. Then you need to be able to reduce and adapt that story to hit the right notes with the right people so they become champions for your business case.